Caspar Craven, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Great to be here with you.
Thank you, and it's lovely to have your time. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things going on, like most people, but it's you try and fit everything in, don't you? So,
well, you talk about fitting things in. I was doing the write up about where is this going to go, the draft, the guide for what we're going to talk about. I got to the end, and then I just realised, I better add the fact that you built a tech firm and sold it for 7 figures. And a lot of the time, I'm building these things around the main point of the story, and that, to a great extent, would be the main part of someone's story. But with you, we've got world travel, we've got leadership, we've got books. Where exactly do we start?
So I don't know. Maybe we start with the thing that I've been working on for the last 6 months,
Let's do that.
Which is all about being more human. And I've just finished writing this book, which is all about rethinking how do we build teams. And the way that I was taught how to build teams when I sort of came into the working world in the 90s was that it was all about management, all about profits, and people were the afterthought in terms of how you generated those things. And, following those rules, I've made more mistakes than I care to remember. In fact, I've just written a book about all the mistakes. That's basically what the book is. It's 20 different mistakes that I've made. And
let's have a look at that book. Let's see the book.
There it is. Be More Human. Rethinking the rules of high performance teamwork. And so, through both learning, working with a family team to sail around the world, both my business venture teams sail around the world another time, building businesses, I've kind of had a whole bunch of different experiences around what it takes to thrive, what it takes to be more human, what it is to build amazing teams that make things happen. And the core of that all comes back to humanity, that we are all flawed in delightfully beautiful ways. And there is no one answer to everything. We're all works in progress. So I guess, my core thesis is all around just embracing the humanity of each of us and figuring out how we work ourselves and then how we work with other people. So that, I guess, is the core theme. It's about pulling out the humanity to how do we make amazing things happen together.
Wow. I mean, at Wellity, we exist really to normalize the conversation around mental health, to reduce the barriers that people can think that they've got to overcome to be the best versions of themselves. It's so apparent now with social media and everything else, everyone portraying that 2-minute snippet of the best part of them, which can lead to insecurity in so many people because they think that's what perfection is and that's what we've all got to be. Suddenly we've got someone like you coming out and saying, well, of course no one's perfect. And we all know that no one's perfect.
And, I'm going to tingle just saying that, because that whole mindset is exactly what I've got in my sights because that was what I grew up in. It was this whole thing about comparison, perfection, and, it has to be a certain way. And the world doesn't work like that. And, we're making ourselves, exactly as you said, sick, mentally ill by trying to force ourselves into these different ways. And the book here, right, it's got a thumbprint on it because we've all got one, right? And we just look at ourselves, we remind ourselves we're all humans, right? We're all flawed. That's okay. What is the thing that's amazing about you? What's the thing that's amazing about me? How do we figure out what it is that we should be doing together, not by the comparison to whoever's on Instagram or whatever else. That path, in my experience, doesn't lead anywhere good. So it's just cool.
There was a time when I had the rough time, which was before Wellity, which is pretty much which conceived Wellity, was that I was guilty of comparison. I was in a bad time in my life, and I was looking at these other people. I was looking at what they were achieving and where they were, which is, when you start to compare, you never win. You lose immediately because it's not correct what you're looking at. You're looking through this veneer that someone's pre-constructed. And also, everyone's got different timelines. So where I could have been looking at them up there thinking that who knows whether it's gone like that now or indifferent. It's a dangerous game. And I worry with 2 children myself, and obviously you'll come onto this, that this is a world and environment, this perfection that everyone's growing into.
It's an incredibly dangerous thing. And I think, the friend of mine, Jamil, he often says, if you should, the answer lies in introspection. And if you're not comfortable with that, you should take a long, hard look at yourself. And tied up within that humor, I think you have to interrogate yourself to confess your strengths and your weaknesses. What are the things that you love doing that you're brilliant at? What are the things where you're weak? And we've all got, things we're better at than other things. And it's knowing that and understanding that, and, following your own course, going to the beat of your own drums rather than anybody else's. And, that for me is the core of it. And I you mentioned there, tough times in your life. The only reason I learned this stuff was back in 2009. My wife I set ourselves this crazy goal because our life was in a dire place. I was working 16, 18 hours a day in my business. We were losing money. I was on the point of losing my marriage, losing my family, losing my business. And it was like I was following these old rules. And it was always, I'm going to build a business, make some money, and then I will go and do these other things and spend time with my family because I've now got this financial security blanket. And it was just the wrong way around. And literally, it was all about to fall apart. And that was the point where I was like, let's switch it around. Let's create a family-first story, a story that builds a cohesive unit together as a family. We were built on trust by really listening to each other. And we created that family-first story. And that was build a business that's capable of letting us go and sail around the world. So we said we're going to sail around the world for 2 years. And it was just that complete switch round. And I think, there's a core set of skills for building an amazing team, for building fulfillment, for building happiness. And you can either learn those skills at work or you can learn them at home. It doesn't matter where you learn them, but learn them you must. And for me, the home place was the safe place where I developed those skills of building that trust, creating the shared story, creating a set of values of how we were going to do stuff together as a family. And once I learned that in the family environment and home environment, then I took that across to the work environment. I then became the best business leader I'd ever become because I'd now learned these skills in a safer environment. But I would only have got to that place because we said, here's this deadline, we have to do this. And that forced me to have the humility to accept I didn't have all the answers and what I was doing was not working. And that humility, taking away the ego, was one of the hardest parts. It was one of the chapters in the book is basically, removal of or stripping back the ego. And facing the cold, hard truths about all of us. And it was only through that I then started to absorb and learn the lessons. So.
Caspar, are you saying that here we have two grown men telling each other that we're not perfect?
I think it's exactly.
And that we're still around, we're still able to have quite a nice conversation and probably pat each other on the back of other stuff, but we're not trying to impress each other and impose our great achievements on each other. And actually the conversation and how we bonded coming from just being normal, because I guess that's what everyone can relate to. Absolutely.
So in my workshops, I have a very simple model, which is called PEP. What are you putting first? Profits, your ego, or people? Which one is it? In the moment, which one right now? And so often, if you're in business, right, it's profits, right? We've got to get the result, got to do this. Or it's the ego. It's like, I've got to say how great I am. I've got to be significant. Or is it other people? Because it's other people who are going to make stuff happen. And it's just a simple reminder. It's, what are you doing? So
Can I add something into that as well? When I look at the young people and anyone who's on social media, when you say profit, yes, if you're in a corporation or you're running a business, you should be, that's got to be high up the list. You've got to pay the bills. There seems to be this new generation now where ego is almost its own currency, where on social media, I don't know, I've called it various things. I better not call it what I usually call it, but it's a currency of likes that doesn't translate into money or anything else. That the fact that you put a post up and it's, if I look at, dare I say it, my own kids as well, and if they don't get 30 likes, they take the post off. And it seems to be this, and I suppose that is ego, vanity, something else that even in business, you could spend all day putting posts up, and I don't know, maybe it's a bullshit bubble. right? Let's say it what it is. It's something that doesn't relate to anything apart from this almost like fruit machine element of getting a notification lighting up. And yes, it increases your endorphins, but yes, you could spend all day, every day on these things. And maybe that's the E of the ego in between things, but it doesn't necessarily help the people around you or profits. It's a challenging time.
It is. And I think, one of the things to bear in mind about the whole social media thing, and I think you and I have a very similar mindset on this, is that what you are up against is the most brilliant neuroscientists and people who understand how our psychology works, who are working at Facebook and Instagram and so on. They understand our innate human insecurities and our innate human needs, and they have created this beautiful mousetrap where you go there and you keep pressing the button almost like in a Pavlovian type way to get the response. And look, I fall for it as well. It still happens to me, and I know it's happening to me, which drives me even more crazy, because it's hard to be immune from it. But I think you have to also give yourself a bit of not give yourself too much of a hard time, because you are battling against the best brains in the world who've designed something that is designed to trap you. It's interesting, Cal Newport. He wrote a book he's written several books, one called So Good They Can't Ignore You, and the other one called Deep Work. And he talks about how basically he just literally come off social media completely. And look, I know I haven't. I get a lot of my work through social media, but it's a double-bladed sword. But he says, by going out there, he hasn't really lost anything by not being on it, and he's not falling into the mousetrap. So it is a modern day thing, and those companies are just there because they want to make money. They're profit organisations. They're not there for your benefits. They're there to drive clicks and revenues for their shareholders, fundamentally. So.
Yeah, and I spoke to Roger Woodall recently, and Roger founded the Bournemouth Sevens, which is like, I don't know, 30, 50,000 people a year turn up to this sporting event, which has music, and he said he's had a 3-year detox. He actually physically called it a detox off social media. And I think you're right. This neuroscience, this thing that taps in, you say if we'd put a post on before this interview, and are you wondering whether you've got 10, 12 likes or anyone's commented? I mean, it's like, it can be a bit of an addiction, can't it?
It is. And, in the world at the moment that, so many of us are sort of connecting to the world because we're all working from home. It's just suddenly it's just become more intense. And that for a lot of people is the only social connection they're getting at the moment. So it's, it's a funny world at the moment. I think you have to, try and take as much control of your own well-being as possible, right? So it's
you do, and the first thing I want to do is thank you for telling us. When anyone tells me about a time in their life that they had to be resilient, you've got to thank you for sharing. If everyone just talked about these times as if it was normal, and stop trying to hide behind the good times or the faces that we portray on social media, I think we'd all have an environment where we could talk more freely. You were very strong in the sense that you noticed it. It didn't take you under. You still must have had some strength and resilience, trust in the relationship, etc., to think, I'm going to build this. I'm not going to lose what I've got. So by displaying a form of what could be described, you may think of as weakness because you were down, is actually a period that you may have been at your strongest or most resilient to have to overcome that and effectively sail around the world.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm really mindful of is when I relay that story back, how I was in that challenge time, it comes across in the matter of 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And it would be easy to underestimate the amount of pain and challenge that you go through on that journey. It's not like you have this pain and suddenly you have the thought and then you flip through to the next thing. And so anyone who's in a place where they may be challenged, it's not like an instantly come in and come out thing. And, one of the things, again, I've written about in the book actually, is I talk about this concept of soaking in the pain. Now, we have an innate dislike of pain for all the obvious reasons, and innately we want to run away from it. But I think that pain is giving us a message, and unpalatable though it is, it's living in that. And I always think about lifting it up and turning it around, staring really hard at it. And back in the day, it took, months and months and months of trying to figure out with my wife how to communicate. What do we do about the business? What do we do about our family life? And, you know, you have good days when it feels like it's going up, and then you have bad days where it just like crashes down and you don't know where it's going to go. But, you know, the important thing, of course, is that you get back up and you keep going and you keep plugging away. And I think that's because you believe that there's something better out there in the future than there is in that current moment. So, you know, I'm always about, you know, what's the story out there in the future that's more exciting than where we are today. And I guess, you know, my innate belief is that there's always something better that you can create out there. But sometimes you've got to wade through an awful lot of shit to get there. So.
Yeah, I agree. And this is why I think stories of failure, stories of perceived weakness, stories of resilience are far more influential now because they're more real. I think people are craving authenticity. We all know because everyone's going to be touched at some point with grief or debt or anxiety or divorce or whatever, even if it's not directly you, it's going to be around you. And to hide that under this veneer of perfection, I think is misleading and can be dangerous, quite frankly. And I think this is why we're trying to make role models of people like yourself that are just, you've achieved amazing things, let's not forget that, but you've achieved them in the light and in response of being normal.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that I feel really strongly about, again, it's taking these ideas into the workplace. Because I remember, you know, I hear so many times, and it's like, I have a work life and a home life. No, you don't. You've got one life. You're the same person, right? How you do anything is how you do everything. All the stuff translates through. And the businesses that I love are the ones who, you know, genuinely care about the people in their teams. What's going on for them? How can I help you? Really listening and understanding that. And understanding that when you go home at 6 o'clock or wherever, you know, stuff happens then as well. And, you know, that affects how you are. There was some research that came out at the beginning of the year from the Sunday Times. I think it was about 70% of people, certainly 71% of people who were earning over 100 grand a year had serious problems in their home life.
I'm writing this down, don't worry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's in the book.
Oh, right, okay.
But there were 500 people surveyed, and what's that? Over 2/3 of people who are, you know, perceived as sort of, you know, having sort of, you know, decent earnings, and they had, you know, problems in their home life. And it's just wrong, right? There is something fundamentally wrong about that statistic. It's about that trade-off between profits versus people and home life. And, you know, it's finding fulfillment in both, and you know, not trading off, you know, be successful at work and then my old model of the world. It's how can you get those things working in tandem, and you know, having employers, having organizations who understand that. And, you know, I have a good friend of mine, actually, he worked for I won't name names, but one of the largest let's say entrepreneurial driven tech companies in America. And for the last 4 years, they've just flogged his guts out. And he's now just moved, or 6 months ago, he moved to one of the other largest tech companies in America. And they put the well-being of the team right heart and center. So they're looking after him. And he basically said he's like detoxing after 4 years of just like being flogged senseless, for the want of a better phrase. And it's the second type of organization, the ones who really understand what drives us as humans. And those are the ones who, you know, talent are gravitating towards where they're ending up. Those are the ones who are going to win in the long run, I think, because
that's the message we're trying to get across. Wellity is a support mechanism for the sales industry, but busy professionals as well, because you've just used the word flogging. One of my favorite phrases: you cannot keep flogging a racehorse without attending to its hooves, without giving it some decent food, rest, playtime, and there comes a limit with burnout and anxiety and everything else. And I think we're seeing a shift, and I think your friend has really highlighted this, is that people think that, well, some people, old school, used to think well-being is fluffy slippers, bowl of fruit, and a card on your birthday. Well, it is more than that, because your friends just jumped ship and experiencing those benefits. So well-being in the workplace does affect the bottom line, because it allows you to onboard better staff, retain your staff members, give them a sense of...
Absolutely. And that's why I think you guys are doing an incredible job, because it is putting that message out there, and the more times that is shared, the more likely it is that culture is going to shift. But, you know, the marketplace is going to force that anyway, because talent is going to gravitate towards those organizations who are taking care of people better. So, sorry, my phone's just ringing. I'm just going to switch it off. Apologize.
Sure.
Isn't that annoying when that happens? I thought I'd switched it off.
Don't worry, I'll make a note. Right, 29 minutes and we'll edit that.
There we go. I'm back then.
Yeah, so you mentioned a great phrase that talent will gravitate. Where is that? To where they are appreciated?
So talent will gravitate, I think, towards organizations that have a purpose which goes beyond profit. Another friend of mine, he IPO'd his company last year, and they described themselves as the first purpose-driven publicly listed company. And they had some interesting conversations with the stock market listing authorities, saying that we're going to put so much into the, how we're going to, give back and so on. And what's amazing is they're a very acquisitive company. The companies they're acquiring, the talent they're bringing on board are incredibly motivated by that, because it's doing something for something beyond profit. So purpose is one, and then the other one is just treating people like humans, recognizing that we have home life and the work life, and it's not use the phrase we talked about, flogging things just for the sake of profit. I always say you put people first and the results will follow, and beforehand it was profits first, and people, you've got to work really hard to go and get the profits, and it's like other way around. So
I think your book and your thinking might be coming out at exactly the right time, because if there's one thing that this period had done, has sort of leveled us all, normalized us. I've spoken to CEOs across the globe, and I've spoken to them in their front room. Now, whenever would you get to hold a meeting in someone's front room or workspace like I am with you, or any of these other environments that haven't been perfectly crafted? Isn't there a perfection now to imperfection a bit?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think what we've seen over the past 4 months, so what are we now? We're in early July 2020. So we are 3-4 months into coronavirus. Yeah. And what that has done has merged together home life and work life. And, for a lot of the large companies that I'm working with, I'm seeing all sorts of different things. The mental health and the mental anxiety, that is going up because there's no blurring of the boundaries between work life and home life. I'm seeing tension being put on family lives. People's productivity is going up because they've got less travel time, they're working harder and harder. So ironically, burnout is now a higher risk, I think, than it was before. But there's all these different things that are coming up. When in fact, I think that it's an amazing opportunity to spend more time with your family, because you're traveling less, you're finding more efficient ways to work. And you know what? Let's take advantage of this. And part of my story is that I had 2 years in effective self-isolation with my family on a boat, and I was running businesses at the same time. I was homeschooling and sailing a boat. So you got quite good at sort of juggling those different responsibilities together. And we created 2 years of amazing magic together as a family. And that, I hope, is something that everyone who's experiencing this can find some of that joy as well, to really enjoy people around them, rather than just sort of think, how do I work more hours in the time that I've got. So
yeah, I think that is particularly relevant, being in a confined environment with children and work and homeschooling and everything else. And I want to get to that soon. So I want to give people in the audience just a background of where you got to that point and building your business. Or did you sell your business after you went around the world, or before, which then enabled you?
During, actually.
Oh, right. Okay. You threw that into the mix as well. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So the rules that I was playing. So we came up with our idea in 2009. So, okay, we need to turn life around.
Yeah.
And that was when we came up with the story to go and sell around the world, which is, I write about that in my first book, Where the Magic Happens. And I got to 2012, and I was just driving my business harder and harder and harder, and it was all backfiring. And I got to the point where basically my team threatened to walk out on me because I was being such a dick.
What a lovely admission.
It's the truth.
It's the truth, right?
It's, and that was the slap around the face, and it stung like hell. It really did. Because, you know, I thought, I know what I'm doing, all this sort of stuff. And it's like, no, the world was saying, you don't, you haven't got a clue. So that was when I had to go and really start learning how to become a leader and what it is that motivates people, why do people do things. And there were many, many realizations, you know, one of which is, you know, people only do things for their reasons, not for your reasons. So you have to tap into the world of everybody else, which is why humanity is so important, right? Understanding each person's drivers. And by then, that was 2012, and I turned the business around. We turned the business around in 2012 and turned it from loss-making to very fast growth, very profitable. And so by going into 2013, we're now on a really good trajectory. And I'm like, now how do I get money out of this business in order for me to go and buy a boat, because we didn't have a boat when we came up with the idea. And how do we go and sail around the world? So I then asked myself, probably one of the best questions I've ever asked myself in a business sense, which is, how do I create a business that's capable of running without me? Which I think really should be the mantra for any leader. How do you create an amazing team of people that can run without you? Because if you need to be there, then your ego gets tied up in it. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's enabling things. So we shifted that business so that it was capable of running without me. We created 2 other businesses which were also capable of running without me. One was a property business, and one was a network of 500 online dating sites, which we created in the space of about 6 months. So we created a very profitable internet model doing that. And so that enabled us to start getting the funds together to buy the boat. We bought the boat in April 2014. And because we had this amazing team in the first business, it was a data analytics company. I was dialing in for board meetings once a month and checking in what was happening, but the team were doing far better than when I was there, which, you know, my ego again took another hit. But then you realize actually that's quite a good thing, because you got quite a good result. And then as we sailed across the Atlantic, we had some offers to buy the business. And as we sailed across the Pacific, basically we're negotiating the sale and purchase agreement with the buyer. And so we sold that from the middle of the Pacific for, as you mentioned earlier, 7-figure sum. So that was the outcome from that. So yeah, that was kind of how those things fitted together. So
I have an image in my head of you lying on a boat with a bottle of Sol, sunshine, kids, family go, darling, check the account.
Can I disabuse you of that image quite quickly?
Yeah. What was it? What was it like?
So I'll paint you a picture. We're literally, I don't know, about 5,000 miles out from Panama, going across the Pacific towards Australia. It's the middle of the night. It's about, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going through a storm, and we're like, the boat's like surfing down these big waves. We've got the autopilot on, and I'm on the satellite phone I've got like probably the most expensive phone call of my life, because I've got the satellite phone bills. We've got 2 sets of lawyers. We've got 2 sets of accountants. We've got all different people there. And like, we're in the middle of this negotiation. And I just heard this huge like from up on deck. And it's like, what on earth is that? And I look up, and I can see this one of the sail, the main sail at the back of the boat is ripped. And it's just like flogging all over the place. And it's like, guys, something more important's come up. I've got to go. Put the phone down, and had to go and figure stuff out, and how to get the sails under control and carry on. So that was a bit more realistic to how it was. But when we eventually did close all the documents, we were in more of the description you described in Bora Bora, and when celebrated at a restaurant called Bloody Mary's. So that was a little bit more the picture postcard.
And I'm all for celebrating the wins, right? Because you try, people like, you could have put that photo up of you in Bloody Mary and everything else on social media. Everyone would have been very envious, but they wouldn't have known why or what your story was or what drove you to it, or the bloody hard work, backbreaking work that you'd done to get to that point. This is why you should never judge anyone from just one photo. But look, you've told us about when it was bad and what led you to it. What is the feeling? Just let yourself go back and grace us with the feeling of when it sort of does work out, when life does work out, because this is just as important to You're sailing around the world with your kids and your family and your wife, and you're in a lovely part of the world. You've sold a business for seven figures, which gives you that pat on the back that, you know, all that imposter syndrome when anyone starts a business, it's not going to work, inner critic, and it has, and you're there. What's that feeling like? I mean, I almost want to sit back in my chair and share it with you.
Thank you for inviting me to have the luxury of that moment, because it's not, we give ourselves the luxury of those moments. You know, it's funny, my mind just drifts straight away to actually the magical moments with my kids. And it's not really about the business or the money. And that's nice. That's almost like that's a weight off your shoulders rather than sort of, you know, a real life-changing moment. The real life-changing moments come from the times that you spend with the people that you care about. And I think, you know, in home, in work, it's the relationships that you form along the way that are far more important. So when I reflect back on my business journey, yes, it was a lovely moment seeing the money in the bank account and that sort of stuff. But actually, when I look back, it was the times that I spent with my business partner, Ed. And, you know, we're out there on the streets, like grafting away, getting things done. It's the laughs we had. It's those things that you don't appreciate at the time, but those are the real gems. And, you know, figuring out the answers to tough problems together. And if you told me that when I was having those, I would have like gone, bullshit, I don't believe you. It's all about the money in the bank. But looking back, those were the things that I cherished the most, the times together. And then, you know, by virtue of, you know, learning what I had to learn and putting the business set up in the right way, I then go back to my kids, and I remember magical moments with my daughter Bluebell as we're sailing across the Pacific Ocean, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. We're lying up on the foredeck looking up at the stars, and it's a beautiful warm evening, and we're looking up and seeing the planets, and we're talking about, you know, are there other life forms out there, and just sort of seeing the phosphorescence in the water and the boats gliding, and it's just those magical moments that you have. And it all comes back to relationships and the people you're with. And, you know, the bank balance, it's numbers on a screen, right? And of course that translates to nice things that you can go and do, but you can have fulfilling, meaningful relationships with people no matter what. So.
But you can only do them if you spent time on those relationships as well. You suddenly can't find yourself alone with loads of money and think, right, I'm going to go and build myself a meaningful relationship now.
Absolutely right. And it's, you know, that's something that anybody can do right now. And yeah, and it's like, you know, do you know Ray Dalio?
No.
So he wrote a book called Principles, which I highly recommend to anyone. And, you know, he's you know, one of the world's 100 richest men. And, you know, you'll hear similar things from him, that it's, you know, it's all about the people, the relationships along the way. And yeah, that really all there is at the end of it.
So does the end kind of justify the means then? And they say that, you know, hindsight is the only perfect science. That's a phrase that stuck with me. So when you look back on it, yes, it was very hard work to get the work. It was worth it though, for that moment with Bluebell, wasn't it? On the
totally. I mean,
you couldn't buy that.
Yeah, I think I would say we're all a work in progress, and yeah, you do stuff and you learn, and you know it's important. You know, what you said about 10 minutes ago about, you know, remembering to celebrate the wins, and have. I mean, I'm a massive believer in that, and you know, taking time with the people who matter. And it's funny, you know, I'm at the stage now where I'm building another business now because I really enjoy doing that, and I miss building businesses. And, you know, I'm doing it in a very different way this time. And, you know, it's built around the people that I enjoy spending time with and want to build a business with. So it's, yeah, it just gives you a reframe on it. So.
With a message that you can enjoy the journey as well. It's not just a destination.
You have to enjoy the journey. Yeah, you've got to love the process and what it is you're actually doing. And it's easy to get caught up in stuff, and suddenly it's like, you know, so at the moment I'm like, you know, the book deadline and the final proofs and the edits, and there's moments when it's like, rah! And you go like, hey, stop, why are you doing this? Because you enjoy doing it. Oh yeah, love the process. And it's like, I still have to remind myself, because that's, again, for me, you know, coming to working world, that was so ingrained that it's all about the outcome rather than the process. And it is about the process, not about the outcome. So it's I have to keep reminding myself. So.
And so, which business did you sell? Was it Bora Bora, did you say, or just as you were going across?
So it's the data analytics business, and we sold it. We signed the final papers when we were in Bora Bora.
Bora Bora. And what about the dating websites and all? Is that still going, or did you?
So I mean, the dating market got beautifully disrupted by some new players whilst we were away. So that business definitely reduced, and it's not one we have anymore. So we sold that. So
yeah. So it's ups and downs, isn't it? Yeah, we're all work in progress. We are in a period of COVID now where some people are flourishing. Let's not get away from that. You can only control the controllables. And if the environment around you allows you to make the most of this time, then you'd be foolish not to, I guess. Some people are struggling. We talk about homeschooling and being in a small environment. Talk us through that. I mean, the logistics, I suppose. How big was this boat? How many of you were on there? Were you tripping over each other? Are you just a typical family at sea? What happened?
I don't know what a typical family at sea is. So the room that you see behind me is about the same size as the living space that we had. Wow. So the communal living space. So it's 53 feet long, and there were 5 of us on board for the majority of the time. It's me, my wife, and our 3 kids. They were 9, 7, and 2. So imagine homeschooling for 3 kids, all at different stages, and having to keep the boat safe and sailing the whole time. And also, overseeing businesses too. So there were lots of different things going on. We did a lot of work before we went around our roles, who was doing what, having really clear, open conversations around that between me and my wife. I think it's one of the important things in a COVID world where people are working from home, and it's like, who's doing the childcare? Who's doing the meals? Simple conversations, right? But if you don't have them, I promise you, they lead to sort of, the biggest arguments because someone feels taken for granted and all those sorts of things. So simple conversations around who's doing what and when. And we did a lot of work on our strengths. Again, another part of the book is all about, understanding what each person is brilliant at doing, getting people doing more of that. So on the boat, the most natural thing to do would have been that I would have been the mechanic and my wife would have been doing the cooking. Now, I'm not someone who likes the details, and you give me an engine manual, I look at it and it's like, well, okay, I'm not going to do much with that. Whereas my wife loves the detail. So she became our mechanic, and I did most of the cooking. Why? Because that played to our strengths. Same conversation everyone's having, right, with COVID-19. It's like, who's doing what in the home thing? And even now, I'm spending most of my time working, and I will write a card for my wife every single morning saying, these are my timings today. This is when you can have your off watch time. So she'll have a 3-hour block of time where she goes and does nothing related to work or the kids or whatever else. So it's creating the space, because otherwise it's dangerous. I just come and just charge into work and come back at 6 o'clock in the evening. It's like, honey, I'm knackered. Where's dinner? And so the whole thing is just like that thing. So just like simple thing is writing a card, like, I'm listening to you, and here's how we juggle the day together, and then we go out for date walks. So the roles, the routines, how do we do stuff? So it's just facilitating open conversations around that. And we were forced to do that because we knew we'd have 2 years at sea, so we had to plan for it. But all of us right now in this COVID world, we've been thrown together, and we know, to go back to the phrase, right, we're sort of, we're building the plane whilst we're flying it, aren't we? And
where'd you get that quote from?
It'd be you, I think. It's,
yes.
But I think this is one I do a lot of talks at the moment, and that's one of the things I'm saying to people is that just stop and have those conversations, because my sense is that everyone's an armchair expert on this at the moment, but I always believe, prepare for the worst, expect the best. And I can't see how we're not going to be in this for a meaningful period of time, and therefore, brace ourselves for a long run of this, and configuring how do we work together with work and home life being merged together, which again, why I was so keen to get the book out now and get it in people's hands, because I think there's some very useful blueprints and ideas that can help a lot of people merge as those things merge together.
Yeah, and depending on when this goes live, let me know when is the book out?
July 16th.
There you go. Right. So if we haven't done it then, if it's after July 16th, you know that we've been working on the preparation and timed this to perfection. So what you're saying is that we are in a confined environment and you can't turn a blind eye to COVID. You couldn't turn a blind eye to the fact you were going to be locked up together for two years. So when you're facing a situation where you know how long it's going to be, there are two options really. One is try and sort of wing it and try and sideswipe it, get away with it. The more preferred option, and we could translate this very easily to businesses, is to plan, is to confront stuff, have awkward conversations and work through it. But like you developed into the chef and your wife developed into the mechanic, is giving yourself that degree of flexibility as well and not necessarily rigidly sticking to something. It's quite a nice analogy, really.
Yeah, and I think the just having that flexibility as well. And, you know, everyone that I speak to, everyone's having their own different experience of how things are at the moment. And I don't think you can assume anything. Some people are absolutely thriving at the moment and actually really enjoying this. And some people are having the most challenged times of their lives right now. And I think there's anything in between those two extremes. So I think that the most helpful thing for any of us, both in the work team and home team, is just to, you know, just have that empathy and understanding for each and every person, and just ask them what's going on for them, and you know, do what you can to help other people. I think that's the key thing. It's the, you know, people first thing. So
I've got some other parallels between that and business, and what popped into my head was, what is a child's meltdown like on a 50 square foot, did you say, environment in the middle of the sea? I mean, it tests a normal human, as we say. Anyway, what's it like?
Child's gonna have a tantrum. They're gonna have a tantrum wherever you are, right? Like, you know, toys get thrown and you get shouted at, and
but you can't go to the pub. You can't ring your mate. You can't. Oh God, you got. What's that like?
So, well, in one sense, it's sort of if they're going to scream and shout, because that's what kids do when they have a tantrum. When you're in the middle of the ocean, it's like nobody else can hear you, don't care.
Yes,
whereas, you know what it's like when you go to Sainsbury's, your child has a meltdown there, and it's like, shh, you're embarrassing me. In the middle of the ocean, it's like, who gives, right? So, my
mum used to say through gritted teeth, "You wait till I get you home." You wait, with a false smile. You wait till I get you home. I go, oh, you wait. The Marks and Spencer slipper came up.
Yeah. So look, the kids have tantrums wherever they are, don't they? And you know, they press your buttons and so on. You know, one of the key things I think is for all of us having our own emotional awareness of our triggers, our patterns, the introspection piece again. And we've all got them. We've all got our emotional patterns grooved into us from, you know, when we were, you know, small kids. So better understanding of ourselves is a key part of that. But yeah, no, the kids are going to have the tantrums, and you have to deal with that as best way you can. I mean, it's.
But what you were, which I think what some people lack, and what actually is a luxury nowadays, is the ability to be present with all the distraction that's going on of news and social media and everything else. You are really present in those moments, which I suppose highlights those great moments when you were lying looking up at the stars, because you were so present. It was almost that it had culminated in that instant, something that we lose in today's society.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. So, like, so on one hand, we had the boat. I continue to be watching the boat 24 hours a day and like tuned into that. But on the other hand, absolute truth in what you said, because we switched it. We were basically off the grid, and that was one of the most delightful things around this. That we didn't have that continuous stream of information that we were talking about earlier. So your brain can breathe. It's not being bombarded with new bits of information and what I describe as open loops in your brain the whole time. You can have clear, pure thinking, unadulterated by this onslaught. So what was really interesting is when we came back, we actually sailed 1.5 times around the world and sailed to San Francisco. We then had a year back in the UK, and then we did a 2,000-mile trip up to Canada and back. And we went from being completely switched off to a year back in the UK switched on, to then switch back off again. And what was amazing in that second period of being back on the boat and disconnecting was suddenly we're sitting around the breakfast table together. We're talking, we're playing games, we're reading books together, we're communicating, we're sharing. And you realize how that has been decimated in today's social life. Everyone's, one of these things is within arm's length of, most adults and most kids. And I think it's one of the most corrosive things to, humanity that there are, that we're not present because of that. And I only experienced that because being at the extremes of seeing it switched on and switched off. So, am I perfect with that? No, far from it, right? I mean, we've got the kids right now. We're trying to get on with work. So we do what most other people are doing. It's like, here's some YouTube, here's some Netflix, and they go and do that. And you get on with stuff because you have to be practical about doing things. But I at the same time, I know it's unhealthy and I shouldn't be doing that. So
I've got the name for your next book. Life when you're off the grid, living off the grid. I mean, there's something lovely about when you talked about round the table, having breakfast. I remember way before social media, years ago when I was about 8, we used to go away for a month to France in a tiny little caravan. 5 of us, me, 2 brothers and my parents. And it was those moments when someone would burn the toast. And I still remember the taste of that burnt toast round that caravan playing Scrabble or something. And, they're fond memories that don't cost a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's, goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's about those relationships. It's about those moments, isn't it? And, those things are the magic. That's where it's at. So I hope, everyone takes this time. It's like, what? Just stop, pause, and just be present with whatever's important. So.
Yeah, and the reason we're predominantly going out to the sales industry, we'll go out to any industry, any busy professional or anyone that needs well-being or normalize the conversation around mental health, is that salespeople are like that. Performance has to go that way. So you've always got to perform. Whereas being a human goes like that. Emotions, tired, emotional. And the two things don't marry up, because how can you always be up there if you're down here? And the difference with salespeople perhaps and industries like that is that you don't just have to go up to being normal, you have to put your game face on, which takes you up there, which can be really exhausting sometimes if you're going through debt, divorce, grief.
You know what, it's I really like your view on this, because I think the myths around health and wellness is that, it just means, you've got to be soft on everybody. And it's just like, what? You need to have time off. And then when you're back on, you can be absolutely at the top of your game, even higher than you would have been before, because you're refreshed, recharged. This is not a soft, fluffy approach. This is about getting best performance. So that's my take. But how do you respond to that? What I think is a myth out there?
I see. It's like a car. If you're putting the wrong fuel into the car, if you're not resting it and driving miles without any MOT, without any upgrades or anything else or consideration for the actual vehicle, it'll break down and conk out. I just think it needs people to be normal. I love that word. You use human as well. Just be normal, down tools, consider what it would be like if it was yourself. Now, it's an element of trust, because I think there's still this thing is, if I let people work from home, they're going to be watching daytime TV all day. Are they really? Have we? No, we haven't. Well, if I give them a day, if I say you can have a day off or a week off because a relative has died, would they use it? Would they sit around? Would they want 2 or 3? Would they take an inch and take? I don't know. Try it. Do you know what I mean? Let's not let the fear or the preconception come in. Let's try things. If it works, if you've got trust and relationship, it won't be abused. Do you know what? You'll get that back tenfold. You know what?
I remember when the social media first started coming in, there was talk of companies banning social media.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine saying, well, look, if you don't trust your employees, don't hire them. It's
so true.
And it's like, that's what it is. I mean, it's like, in a fundamental, it's a team is just a group of people who trust each other. There's nothing more, nothing less. And if there's no trust, there's no team. So, make the choice, didn't you? And it's like, and you build trust. I mean, you deliberately, consciously, specifically build trust between a group of people. And there are ways to do that. But if people are concerned about that, then there is no team. So.
Yeah, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. And I'm aware that I could just go on and on and on, but your time is very precious. You're mid-book launch. I want to just quickly brush on maybe the comparison. You had yourself, your wife, and three children, wasn't it?
Yep.
And if you relate that into work, what were the things that you could then draw across as parallels? We've mentioned communication and we've mentioned relationships. Or anything else that made that go almost not? Well, I'm sure it wasn't seamless, but better than what it would have done.
So taking ideas from family into work.
Yeah. I mean, you had a small environment and lots of people in it, and you made it work. So
I think the whole concept of family is a really, really powerful one for business. Here's why. You never get to a place with family where you get to the end of the quarter or the end of the month and say, you know what, you failed, you're out. And
So true. That's so
it's
true.
like,
You haven't hit your target. You didn't clean your bedroom. That's it. I'm getting another child.
exactly. It's like, it's a long-term thing. And I think that taking that mentality of genuinely caring for people, I think, I don't know anybody who goes to work saying, you know what, I'm going to do a bad job today. I think everybody sets out with good intentions and we get blown off track because we're human and all these sorts of things. So if you've got people in your team, understand how can I help them develop? What is it that they need? And that comes much more naturally, I think, in the family environment. But if you take that idea that there is no finish line, our kids always used to say to me in a notion, it's like, are we nearly there yet? And no, we're not, because this is a journey that never ends and it keeps going. And I think taking that mentality into business, that it's a long-term game that we're in, and we're about building sustainable things for the future, built on a great culture, great people, where there's trust, and not to get derailed and blown off track by the monthly, quarterly, annual results. I think that's one of the most dangerous things in business, and I think that's the shift that we're seeing. So I learned that in the family environment, and I think that's something pretty powerful to take into the work world.
Okay, I've got another title for you. There is no finish line. I mean, can you imagine how powerful? Right, well-being isn't important. Doesn't affect the bottom line. I can't take that to the shareholders. No, all right, that's your way of thinking of it. Maybe the more modern way of thinking it is, we've got culture, we've got trust, we've got buy-in. It's sustainable. Can you imagine how powerful that is to the longevity of a business and the production when you're looking at high-performing salespeople who have all been MDs of their own environment for the last 3 or 4 months? Let's face it, we are all in control of what we're doing now. Very reluctant to give that up for an employee unless you come to me with something else.
Yes.
That is powerful stuff.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Businesses have a choice, right? I mean, they can either build a product or a service that's timeless and will never change, or they can build a culture which is timeless. And for me, it's like the first one doesn't exist, so you have to build a culture which is timeless, right? So,
yeah, culture time. Sorry, I'm writing stuff down. It's like a lesson. It's a lesson in leadership. I'm lapping it up, and I know our audience will. Right. So we are drawing it to a close now. Through building a tech business, through building other businesses, selling them for 7 figures, sailing across the world with your family because you realized that something needed to change. So you confronted that head on. What is your definition of well-being?
The words that come up for me is peace of mind. And I think that, there's so many different things that we're having thrown at us these days. And to have that peace of mind is a really, really valuable thing. There's a saying in karate, I used to love karate years ago, and it's like having a mind like water. And it can just be like super, super still. And then whatever you want to deal with or work on, that you can just focus only on that thing there. But when our mind is distracted by should be doing this, should be doing this, should be doing this, and we should all over ourselves. And there's all those different things. To have that peace of mind, for me, that's the place. And I think you get peace of mind by having good diet, by having exercise, by looking after yourself, because those things put you in the best state to do that. So peace of mind.
Thank you. A terrific answer. And that word "should" sends shivers down my spine, because you should be doing this. You should be going out for it. Oh, shut up. Just that voice that's telling you that voice is a culmination of everyone who might have been so insecure that they've been insulting you, or they might not have your best interests at heart, or something that you've picked up. So in the light of everything else as well, everything that you've done, what would be and this is your last question, it's a biggie, if you could give a person one takeaway from the culmination of all your experiences, what would it be?
I think that I'm drawn back to the title of the book, which is basically to just be more human, to see that in yourself, to be more gentle on yourself, and expectations of yourself, the comparison with other people. To remember that all of us are a work in progress. We are all flawed. I did a talk 2 days ago, and it was for about 500 financial advisors, and there were 46 comments which were posted online. 45 were like, amazingly positive, and there's one negative one. Which one did I focus on? Of course, it's like, you know what? It's just like, we're all flawed. We're all learning the whole time. And it's just to be, remember that we're all human beings. Be gentle.
Wow. Be gentle, be kind. Thank you. Let me see that book again. Let me see both the books.
Okay, so that's the new one.
Yeah. Be more human.
And this is the old one, Where the Magic Happens.
Okay. And where can people find you, Caspar?
CasparCraven.com. There's only one of me, so or LinkedIn and all the other usual platforms, Amazon and so on. So,
right, and I will say I reached out to you and you came straight back to me. At Wellity, we want to normalise the conversation around mental health with a view to helping people become the best versions of themselves and allowing people to talk openly and honestly about imperfections, more so than any perfections. So I can't thank you enough for your time. It's an absolute privilege to have you on. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'd just like to say I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think you're doing an amazing job with Wellity. This is an important message that needs to be taken out there for the sanity of each and every person and the sanity of our planet. And keep doing the amazing work. So kudos to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. And collaboration is key with all these things. So Caspar Craven, thank you so much for your time. And I very much look forward to hopefully meeting you in the flesh one day and meeting you properly. Thanks again.
Take care, Simon. Thank you.